So we will, I'll check on your homework. We'll discuss the Four Noble Truths, and then I'll introduce this week's study on right view and right intention. Matt, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you. Good to be here with everybody. The Four Noble Truths chapter is one that I think I have to keep coming back to that more than anything else. Like the Eightfold Path, I can remember each one and I can think about them in relation to certain events in my life. But then I remember that those are all in the context of the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
So I think that really pithy four little truths are what this is all about. So it just stands to come back to those.
Yeah, that's the right word, pithy. I like that word, as opposed to concise. But everything that the Buddha would teach for the 45 years of his teaching career was in the context of the Four Noble Truths. He never taught anything extra or to develop a different understanding. He repeatedly said throughout his teaching career that I teach the understanding of suffering and the cessation of suffering, nothing more. But when you really look at that, that is the common human problem. It's what we're all after. We're all after a way of developing a type of peace and happiness that we can depend on and we know is going to be there. And that's the underlying message of the Four Noble Truths. And I should say for our newcomers, we're in the third week of a study of my book called The Truth of Happiness that I mentioned before, that develops meditation within this broader framework that the Buddha taught meditation in. And it covers, it really covers the entire Buddhist teaching. It doesn't cover every sutta that's in there, but that's the point of the book. And that's what we're talking. We're in the third week now. So, Laura, how's your study going?
My study is going along, and I continually remember the Four Noble Truths, especially the first one, on a regular daily basis.
Yeah.
It's very helpful, keeping my head about me.
Yeah.
when things don't go as I hope or expect. So, yeah. So I actually didn't read the chapter because I haven't been coming to class that often, but it is always a daily remembrance for me.
Yeah. And you're skillfully honest too. Good for you. Well, I'll almost repeat what I just said. Matt, the Eightfold Path develops that understanding of suffering, and the Eightfold Path is the fourth factor, or the fourth noble truth, the path leading to that understanding. So again, everything the Buddha taught was to develop an understanding of the underlying disappointing nature of life and our contribution to that process. Luke, good to see you tonight. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, I think I definitely got like some quick momentum from like the meditation and that effect of like in my life, like instantaneous like gratification, I guess, for what I was after. But this sort of practical application to your life of these, of these Four Noble Truths, I can see that that's going to take a little more practice with me.
Yeah. And it also points to the fact that meditation is not, in some subtle ways, we can, in a general way, look at meditation kind of as an escape, and that's okay. I mean, it's okay to every now and then just sit quietly, be mindful of your breath just to get away from life, but it's really much more than that. The purpose of meditation is to deepen our concentration so that we can hold in mind the other factors of the Eightfold Path, and so there's more to it than just that. But the profound nature of simply sitting quietly and not getting caught up in our thoughts is really the first step of interrupting our own conditioned thinking and our own real resistance to developing a true understanding of who we are in relation to the world. Glad you're here tonight. Rob, good to see you tonight. How are you? How's your study?
Study's been good. And Christmas was a wonderful reminder of the first, second movie truth.
Dukkha occurs.
Dukkha occurs. Whoa. So it was really good to again be reminded that it's there, and it's the clinging and craving for things that keeps it going.
Yeah.
It was. So we're working on number 3.
Yeah, as we all are.
And that went relatively well. Right? So it's to not crave for things, when all the drama happens, to be able to not crave for peace and quiet, please. And it's moving along.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
Enjoying going through all the steps again, this time.
Yeah, in a structured way. That insight that it requires continued craving and clinging to continue the unsatisfactory experience that's represented as dukkha. It's up to us. It takes a concerted effort, even though it's so familiar and conditioned that we don't recognize the effort we're putting into maintaining this self-referential ego personality that's prone to confusion and delusion.
It's easy to see it in other people. It really is.
Yeah. And it's easy to point it out in other people.
But it's to see your own contribution and recognize that you're going through your own sufferings still, even though you're seeing other people going through their suffering. There's my own contribution to. I'm craving for something here.
Yeah, there's just a little piece.
Yeah, just a little piece.
Who was that was talking about Alistair? I think it was Saturday's class about that the old original Christmas Carol with Alistair Sim, and how probably most of you won't remember that anyway, but I do, and how he had his revelation and he's dancing around in the movie. Nobody remembers this. And basically what he did is he waked up. He woken up. He had achieved awakening. He put aside all his self-referential and clinging views to how Christmas should be, mean and miserly, and he ended up enjoying the last 30 minutes of December 25th. So. Once we develop that, it lasts for a little bit longer than a few minutes, though. So, thank you for bringing it up. Terry, welcome to our Sangha. I know you're not doing the study with us, but hopefully you'll join us and continue. But how was your meditation tonight?
It was good. I thought it would be very difficult, 20 minutes. I'm used to a little meditation through the practice of yoga, but not 20 minutes. So I found I was able to pay attention to my breathing and stay focused.
Outstanding. And that's the basic meditation practice, recognizing you're caught up in your thoughts, come back to the sensation of breathing. And I say that because it's easy to get fixated or expect to just be mindful of our breath. And if we can't do that, to get very frustrated. But nobody can do that. It really is both of those components. And if you remember that meditation is primarily for deepening concentration, and you do that method, every meditation session is successful. So I'm glad you joined us. And also to emphasize that it's more than meditation. The practice is supported by the other 7 factors of the Eightfold Path. And that takes a little bit of time to develop. And also, if you're starting out again or just reinvigorating a practice, it really is best to start with shorter periods of meditation, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes that you can do consistently. And if you can do that twice a day, very quickly, you'll have a well-established meditation practice. And I hope you can continue to join us. So welcome. Patrick, how about you? How was your meditation tonight?
It was wonderful.
And you're able to maintain that method?
It was.
Yeah. Is this similar or maybe exactly the same of what you've been doing?
I've been practicing Tina.
Oh, okay. I started out with that in 1981 or 2 or something like that. And that served me well for a couple of years. And for me, it got to the point where it felt like there needed to be more to this. And back then, I think today, the politics of going into the advanced levels were a little expensive.
Yeah.
And eventually I studied all different practices in all the different Buddhist schools, and eventually came back to this simple practice that the Buddha taught. And I found it most effective, especially developing the broader framework. So again, welcome to our song, and hope you continue to join us. You look familiar to me, do I?
We've met before.
Oh.
I live in Los Angeles now, so I'm visiting.
Oh, well, you're going to have a long trip, or maybe you can hook up with Toph when you come back on Tuesday night. So welcome to our song. Mary, it's good to see you tonight. How are you?
Oh, it's great to be here. I figured if you were willing to invest in the time to be here during this week, then I would too. So I'm really happy to be here.
Glad you're here.
Just had a wonderful couple of days of holiday with many people, and interesting when I really didn't feel any suffering, considering I was with about 35 people that make up my intimate little family. So it was really from born 4 weeks ago to my mother, who's 85. So it was quite a variety of people from a lot of different places. So it was really very joyous, and I feel very blessed about that. That was great. Something Laura said is one thing I do think about as I go through my practice is I really wrestle with expectations. I think it's very hard to be a mom and not, like I think I read that somewhere in the card I got when I became a mom, that I'm there to set up all the standards and expectations. Now you're telling me that's not right. So, but also even in my marriage and it's certainly going around holidays, you can have a lot of expectations. For, one of my daughters came out of her bedroom as we went to Christmas Eve Mass, and I didn't keep it all together. Wasn't my expectation for what she should have been wearing versus what she was wearing. And, it just creates this, she could care less what my expectations are. So she makes it funny. But that's an area that I continue to think about. I'm sure it has bigger impacts than just that, and probably shows up on my face and all of that. But otherwise, my practices really helped me to have to transition well from what's been a very busy year of work, and to be able to take this week off. That's not always easy for me, and the practices really just anchored me and made me able to make that transition. And so it's been just a wonderful series of days. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Isn't it wonderful to have the framework of the Dhamma to experience our life from? And there's nothing in the Dhamma that says we shouldn't have expectations, just to recognize the dukkha that arises from them. And you're doing it, But really, I'm serious about that. That's simply part of the first noble truth. Dukkha will occur.
Well, that is helpful, the way you just said that. It is very helpful because I do struggle with that. Even when we were on retreat, we were up talking one night, and I was like, what's up with that? We're not supposed to have expectations. So I have some work to do in that space, but I appreciate what you just said. That was generous, that of course we have expectations. It's the dukkha we put on top of it. If they're missed expectations, yeah.
That's right. Glad you're here. Keith, good to see you tonight.
Great to see you. The practice is going very well. My study is not. I've been through this before, and the first time I went through this class, I thought I aced it. This time, not so much. It's every chapter. It's like I'm reading it again for the first time and picking up things that I must have just glossed over. There's really a lot in there. But I have a question. This chapter points out several times that we are not our personality. Why?
I don't know.
Is our personality not?
I just wrote it. I'm going to explain it.
That's an extra space to fill. Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Referring to anatta, or the not self-characteristic. When the Buddha used the word anatta, another word is widely misunderstood to imply that there's no such thing as a self. That's not how the Buddha used the word anatta. He simply meant that word to show that what we think of ourselves is not a substantial self or a permanent self worth defending.
Okay.
So that idea that we're not our personality is simply to recognize that we've created this ego personality, which is really the veil that's obscuring reality from ourselves. It's what we use to keep ourselves separate from the truth of reality, where in this context tonight, from the Four Noble Truths, from recognizing our contribution to do good, to ongoing stress. So what that means is that even though we've created a strong identity of this personality does not constitute a self. It's not a self. And the reason why that's important is because with a conditioned mind, all that we think we are is this personality that we've created. And that goes back to the I making. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in tonight's talk too. But
Okay.
does that answer your question, at least on it?
Sure.
Yeah. We're not what we think we are, is really what it comes down to, until we are what we think we are. But that takes the Eightfold Path.
That just cleared it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Diane, how are you tonight? It's good to see you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for sitting up there every week. I appreciate that so much.
I got to be in front of the camera, or else what I say.
Oh, is that what, never mind.
Yes.
I've actually been doing my homework, although I've been, my practice is going well, but I don't know whether anyone ever charts their practice or anything, but mine has valleys and hills and ups and downs and stuff, and I seem to be on a kind of a really, really rocky, sandy, dry, flat, awful place, and it's okay, which is the weird part of it. And I think that I probably am the worst practitioner there ever was, because of I feel like all this stuff is cleaning me out, and sometimes I wonder, is there going to be anything left? And then I think of metta. And I think that's one of the gifts of the practice, is to continue to accept love and kindness for myself, the not self that I am. But and the more I do that, it really kind of just trickles and flows out into my life, because it's like I can see that other people are struggling, and it's so much easier to love other people and accept them the way they are when you've been on these rocky, hilly, awful terrain within yourself. You know that it's okay for them to be there too, or wherever they are. And it's funny how it just kind of expands everything, and embraces. See, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm really glad to be here and have this practice.
I'm glad you're here too, and you're explaining it perfectly well. The true compassion is imbued and informed by the wisdom of understanding our own suffering. It's really the only way we can understand other people's suffering. And that's the true ideal of this practice too. So I'm glad you're here, and thank you for what you said. And something that Keith said, it's almost a struggle going through it a second time. The reason why is you now have developed a framework for seeing things clearly, and that can be unsettling at first. But again, we keep coming back to this. And like I said before, everything that Buddha taught it said that he gave over 84,000 teachings, and that number is just a number that means a lot. It means we don't know how much, but this means he gave a lot of teachings. And every one of his discourses was in the context of the Four Noble Truths. But unless you have the framework and understand that, it's hard to apply some of the teachings. Some of the discourses sound ridiculous unless you understand the context and what they're presented in. And even just reading the Four Noble Truths without the other supportive context is almost like, well, so what? Who cares? Who cares if they're true or not? How do I apply it? Well, you don't understand it until you actually do it. I'm glad you're here, Diane. Thank you. Mark, how are you tonight? Good to see you.
Practice is going well. I found more recently that I'm, I guess, able to see things a little bit more clearly, which is nice. And what's come with that is greater acceptance of what's actually occurring in the moment. I've noticed myself have a level of frustration reduction also, where I can see myself starting to have emotions come up, which are tied to thoughts. And instead of reacting to it, I've actually been able to just sit with the feeling and just experience it and not have to try to change it or attach anything to it. And I had a really interesting moment with that probably 4 or 5 days ago, where I was really frustrated, but I didn't do anything more with it. I just sat there in the frustration, and it was pretty incredible to, for about 2 or 3 minutes without reacting, and then all of a sudden had some insight into what I was frustrated about, and then was able to really approach the situation a lot more clearly. So that's been a really good part of my practice more recently, is to just be able to see that more clearly. I feel like for a while I've been aware of it logically, but now putting it into practice has actually been pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. You know, to have, and that's that refined mindfulness. We're gaining the ability to see things clearly. Again, it's part of the talk tonight too. But thank you for sharing that. Morris, good to see you.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
I know you just did your homework just a moment ago.
Yeah, actually, I did the wrong homework, so that's all right. I was out of intention, but I knew it was bad anyway. To me, it becomes like difficult to sometimes pull everything apart. Like I can tell you intellectually how it's pulled apart, but how it works in practice becomes kind of less clear sometimes. One thing that I would just say, like with what Mark had just said, Diane and I were talking about this yesterday, kind of like when I have a strong emotion or I can feel dukkha, so First Noble Truth arising, right? There's a sense of agitation or tightness or dissatisfaction, and it's unpleasant. There's an aversion. Because I would say that I'm acutely aware of my cravings as well for to keep satisfaction going. So when I hear people saying like, oh, well, it was pleasant, so there was no dukkha. Well, there's a lot of clinging and craving in that pleasantness too, if you really start to look at it. So it's kind of, that's for First Noble Truth, right? You know, it's kind of looking, this is just occurring all the stinking time, you know, and it's annoying, and but recognizing that it's just like, oh, okay, this is just what's going on, and watching where the root of that is, and letting go of that, and returning back to just the actual experience. Third Noble Truth has been really beautiful, and then working with the view of that there is some wisdom occurring here. There is this process unfolding, and I do have, this being does have control over how to change that, right? It's like the impermanence of, we have the potential to recognize it and do something different So there was this discussion of this personality, I think Keith brought it up. And what I'm starting to notice is I'm more identified with my intentions than I am with who I am. Like that's become,